Welcome. In the previous lecture, we saw a simple cost model where you can estimate the total capital investment for a particular process only on the basis of the on-site cost. Then we saw the concept of depreciation, various methods of depreciation, the straight line method, double declining balance, MACRS method, and finally we developed a simple expression for the net cash accruals or the net cash flow to the company from the process. Now in this lecture we take ahead this theme and see the concepts of interest and time value of money. In most of the cases the funds for capital investment are borrowed and therefore we have to pay interest on that loan. It could be in the form of equity where dividend is paid, or the loan can be borrowed from different financing institutions like HDFC's housing development, or IDBI, Industrial Development Bank of India, and then we have to pay interest on that loan or dividend on the equity. Therefore, the interest rate in addition to other parameters has effect on the decision of fund investment. In some cases the funds are completely internal, especially for big companies, okay, and in that case one has to make decision only about investment with highest profitability. Then there are taxes, like in the previous lecture we saw income tax, but in addition to income tax there are several other charges, okay, and which also affect the net profit of the process. Now these are the in addition to income tax, these are like fixed charges such as property tax, depreciation and insurance, which are relatively independent of the level of production. So what we will do in this lecture is that we shall identify various means of assessing the present as well as future worth of earning and investment, which can form basis for comparing among various investment opportunities. We are going to make an investment at time 0 for a particular process, okay, and then we are going to earn certain money or net cash flow that we developed that we saw in the previous lecture over the operation period of the plant, which could be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. However, while making investment at time 0, we have to make an estimate of the future worth of the investment and the present worth of the earnings. That is what we are going to do in this lecture. Let us first see the concept of interest. It is the cost of borrowed money or earnings on money loan. Okay. Cost of borrowed money or earnings. If you are financing any project, then you are going to earn interest, earnings on money loan. There are two other things here, the principal, which is the original amount, that is borrowed, or the remaining unpaid amount of the loan, and next is the interest rate, and this could be defined as amount of money paid on unit principal or a unit of principal in a unit of time, expressed as fraction or percentage per year. Now interest could be calculated in two ways. First is the simple interest and second is compound interest. Simple interest It could be defined as compensation payment at a constant interest rate based only on the original principal. So we can easily develop mathematical expression. If P is the principal that is borrowed, N is the number of time units or interest periods, and if I is the interest rate based on length of one interest period, then the interest that is accumulated, that we denote by I, interest accumulated in n interest period, is I into P into n. Finally, we have to pay back the principal as well, the entire amount, that is principal plus simple interest, due after n interest periods is F is P plus I, where P plus I into P into n, which is equal to P into 1 plus I n. In compound interest, which is universally used, the interest earned or accumulated reinvested interest as well as the principal amount. This is interest accumulated reinvested interest as well as the principal amount. So in this case, the interest is always added to the principal. The calculation of compound interest is rather straightforward. Let us say at principal at time equal to 0 is capital P, the interest rate is I, then we can make a table for calculation. Period, principal at start, interest earned, and then compound amount F. At the end of the period. So for the period 1 from 0 to 1, the principal is P, interest earned is IP, and now this is added to the principal. So the compound amount F at the end of period is P plus IP, which is equal to P this. Then between period 1 and 2, F becomes the initial principal. Principal at start is P into 1 plus I. Interest earned over it is I into P into 1 plus I, and then at the end of the period you have P into 1 plus I into P into 1 plus I, that is equal to P into 1 plus I square. Then between period 2 and 3, the total amount F becomes the initial principal. So this is 1 plus P into 1 plus I square, and the interest earned over it is I times P into 1 plus I square, and then the final amount F is P into 1 plus I cube, and so on and so forth. So after n periods, we can easily write the principal at start. This will be P into 1 plus I raised to n minus 1. Interest earned will be in the last period will be P I into P into 1 plus I to the power n minus 1, and the total amount F will be P into 1 plus I to the power n. Now here the term 1 plus I to the power n is the discrete single payment compound amount factor. Discrete single payment compound amount factor, or it is also known as discrete single payment future worth factor. Now, because of the compounding, the effective interest rate over certain period is different than the nominal interest rate. So that relation we shall see now. Nominal versus effective interest rate. Like for example, Indian banks compound the principal deposited with them on quarterly basis. So the compounding period is not 1 year. However, the interest is expressed on the basis of 1 year, and because of compounding in period lesser than 1 year, the effective interest rate that we earn over the deposits is higher than the nominal interest rate. Okay, so that point we note here. The actual interest period or actual compounding period is not 1 year. Interest rate is expressed on an annual basis. Thus, the effective interest rate that we denote as IEFF subscript is different than nominal annual interest rate. And this we denote, the nominal annual interest rate we denote as I. Now let us try to derive a relation between I and I effective. For example, we say that nominal interest rate of 8% per year compounded quarterly. what we do now is that we define I effective as the interest rate which gives same amount of money at the end of 1 year if the compounding was only once in a year. Nominal interest rate I is not R, nominal interest rate I compounded m times a year. If compounding is m times a year, then the final amount F for a unit deposit, okay, will be 1 plus I by m raised to m as per the previous formula. Now, the amount given by compounding at effective interest rate at the end of 1 year, just single compounding, will be the same. Amount given by compounding unit deposit, we assume deposit to be 1, okay, at the effective interest rate IEFF at the end of year will be F is equal to 1 plus IEFF. And now we have to equate the two equations, number 1, number 2. So 1 plus IEFF is equal to 1 plus I divided by m raised to m. So I effective is 1 plus I by m to the power 1 plus I divided by m to the power m minus 1. So this is a relation between I effective and I. Now let us go back to the problem that the example we had seen, that nominal interest rate of 8% compounded quarterly. So what is the effective interest rate? So here we have I equal to 8%, m is 4 because it is compounded quarterly, so 4 quarters a year. So then the interest rate per quarter is I by m, which is 0.08 by 4, and then I effective, if we substitute that in the formula we just derived, 1 plus 0.08 by 4 raised to 4 minus 1, this becomes 0.824. So the effective interest rate corresponding to 8% nominal annual interest rate is 8.4%, 8.24%. So that is a relation between I and I effective. In some cases there is continuous compounding. As m decreases, I effective increases. So compounding could be per quarter or per month or per week or per day, or in the limiting case let us say per second. Then in that case, what is the relation between I effective and I? Okay, so that thing we note. Some banks, like usually American banks, they do continuous compounding. So for that case, we have to find a relation between I and I effective. Let us say P is the original principal. Now when compounding is continuous, the compounding period M tends to infinity. And then for nominal interest rate of I, the total amount F that is accumulated is P limit M tends to infinity 1 plus I by M to the power M into N, where M is the compounding period and N is the total number of years. N is total number of years of deposit. For effective interest rate, the definition remains the same. F is equal to P into 1 plus I effective. And now we have to equate the two quantities, but before that we try to find the limit of that summation. F is equal to P in case of continuous compounding, P into limit M tends to infinity 1 plus I by M raised to M into N. This we write as P into limit M tends to infinity 1 plus I by M raised to M by I into N, and then we know that limit M tends to infinity 1 plus I by M raised to M by I is E exponential term 2.7182 and so on and so forth. Therefore, in case of continuous compounding, the total amount F that accumulates over principal P is F is equal to P into I into N. And this we equate with the regular formula, equating again 1 and 2. We get 1 plus I effective is e to power I into N, or when N is 1 we get this, and then I is equal to ln 1 plus I effective. This is the relation between I and I effective for continuous compounding. The factor e to power n or in is called as continuous single payment compound amount factor. Or it is also known as continuous future worth factor. Having done this, let us try to see the income tax effect on cost of capital. The capital for business venture can come through various sources. First source, as I said at the beginning of lecture, is loan. It could be in the form of bonds, It could be in the form of stock, or it could be internal corporate funds. The interest that is paid on portion of an investment that comes from loan can be considered as a cost. That is the cost of production. Then, interest paid on the bonds can also be considered as cost of production. Now, when we do preliminary analysis of the economic feasibility of the project, we have to assume that either the funds are totally internal, so that no interest is included, or we have to assume that the interest is charged on total capital investment or a fraction of total capital investment at interest rate equivalent to the rate charged for bank loans. So that point we note. For preliminary estimates, either assume funds for capital investment to be internal, or so that so no interest on it, or assume interest rate same as that charged by bank. The interest rate itself could be a measure of profitability that we shall see when we shall do the discounted cash flow rate of return analysis for profitability of the process. Let us see the concept of loan repayment. The loan that is borrowed from bank is paid back in different installment. Common loan repayment is in terms of constant periodic payments for fixed period. These are also known in many cases as EMI, equated monthly installment, when the period of payment is 1 year. The total payment is constant. However, the principal balance decreases with installment. The interest portion of each payment is smaller than the previous, while the principal portion of each payment is larger than the previous. So that point we note. Each installment contributes to both interest and principal payment. Principal balance decreases with installment. Therefore, for each payment, the interest portion of each payment is smaller than the previous, while the principal portion of each payment is larger than previous. Let us illustrate the calculation of repayment. Let L be the constant amount paid. In each period. Now, as I said, L contributes to both interest payment and principal payment. So, let Ij denote the interest payment for jth period. and let Pj denote the principal payment for jth period. J is the period of payment. P naught is the initial amount of loan. And I is the effective annual interest rate. Remember, I is not nominal interest rate but effective interest annual. So then L is equal to Ij plus Pj. The principal for the jth period is P into j minus 1. So the interest payment will be Ij equal to I into P into j minus 1, where P is the principal for period j minus 1 to j, or P is j minus 1 is the principal balance after payment j minus 1. Okay. Therefore, P j minus 1 is equal to P naught, the initial principal, minus the sum of all payments for the principal till period j minus 1. So minus summation m equal to 1 to j minus 1 in Pm, where Pm is the principal payment for mth period. Now, Pj is equal to L minus Ij, and now for Ij we substitute expression I into Pj minus 1. Pj minus 1 is P naught minus m equal to summation m equal to 1 to j minus 1 Pm. The principal payment component of each installment is then let us say for the first period P1 is equal to L minus I into P naught. For the second period P2 is L minus I into P naught minus P1, which is equal to L minus I into P naught minus L minus I P naught, and so on and so forth. So P3 is equal to L minus I into P naught minus P1 minus P2, and then we substitute for that L minus I into P naught minus L minus I P naught minus L to 1 plus I minus I P naught to 1 plus I. You just keep on substituting for P1, P2, so on and so forth. And then for the jth period, the term for P3, we can simplify as if you expand this bracket, expand this particular bracket and simplify, you get L P3 equal to L into 1 plus I square minus I P naught into 1 plus I square, and in this way the jth principal payment is L into 1 plus I to the power j minus 1 minus I P naught into 1 plus I to the power j minus 1. The sum of principal payment components must be equal to the original loan principal. Therefore, summation Pj equal to P naught equal to summation j equal to 1 to n L into 1 plus I to the power j minus 1 minus summation j runs from 1 to n I into P naught to 1 plus I to the power j minus 1. This is the total sum of all principal payments. Now, over entire payment term, I is constant, L is constant and P naught is constant. Therefore, we can simplify for L here. We can take out L, I and P naught out of the summation sign. Therefore, P naught equal to L into summation j runs from 1 to n 1 plus I to the power j minus 1 minus I into P naught summation j runs from 1 to n 1 plus I to the power j minus 1, and then we substitute for L, we get or simplify for L. Solving for L gives L equal to just rearrangement of the previous expression, P naught into 1 plus I summation j running from 1 to n 1 plus I to the power j minus 1 divided by summation j running from 1 to n 1 plus I raised to j minus 1. So, this is how the periodic payment L is calculated for a given interest rate I and the number of periods n. Let us see how we can evaluate the time value of money. Can we predict the future value of present money or reverse? The present value of future money. The amount of the value of money increases with time. And that is the time value of money. The investment could be in various forms. It could be savings account, fixed deposit, recurring deposit, bonds, stocks. Okay. So wherever we invest money, we have to see that the money grows with time. We have to ensure that the business is profitable, venture is profitable, and then we have to calculate the future value of money. Amount of money available now or available at present is worth or equivalent to greater amount in future. Now we have to consider the time value of money when we invest in a particular business. We have to compare investment that require or generate different amount of funds at different time. The timing of expenses and income may significantly impact the present worth of such funds. Okay. Investment may require, that point we note is that the requirement or generation of funds could be different at different time. and therefore timing of expenses and income significantly impacts the present worth of such funds. Now let us see how we can relate the future value of present money and present value of future money. We have already seen the compounding of with simple interest and compound interest. Therefore, the future amount, if compounding is discrete, such as quarterly compounding, then we have already derived the formula F is equal to P into 1 plus I to the power n. This is future value of present money. We can reverse this and then we can write P is equal to F into 1 plus I raised to minus n. So 1 plus I raised to minus n, this factor is called as the discount factor. Similarly, for continuous compounding, we have derived a formula F is equal to P e to the power I n. We can reverse this and write P is equal to F e to the power minus I n. So minus I n is the discount factor for continuous compounding. 1 plus I to the power n is compounding factor and 1 plus I to the power minus n is discount factor for discrete compounding, and same holds for the continuous compounding. E to the power I n is the compounding factor and e to the power minus I n is discount factor. Now in many cases we have to make investment as single installments or a series of installment over regular time intervals, that is known as annuity or also recurring deposit. Investment as installments series over regular time interval, per month or per quarter or per year. Investment P is made at interest rate I and the number of period is n. So we have a timeline, like you open an account at time 0 and then you make exact installment at various time the period. Okay. So we have here n periods and let us denote R as the investment at the end of each period. So we make investment at the end of each period, not at the beginning. We open an account at time 0 but make investment at the end of the period. Okay. Now in such cases the total amount that is accrued in the bank can be calculated with simple summation. Like the first installment that we make at time 1 is under investment for n periods, n minus 1 periods. So for the first installment value at end of n period here is R into 1 plus I to the power n minus 1, because the deposit R is under investment for n minus 1 period. The second installment, the value is R into 1 plus I to the power n minus 2, so on and so forth, and the final deposit at the end of n period is R. So F, the total amount that is accrued in the bank, R. Now what you can do is that multiply this series by 1 plus I and then subtract from this. So F into 1 plus I is equal to R into 1 plus I to the power n plus R into 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 plus R to the power 1 plus I, and then subtract this, the second from first, okay, and then the summation gives F into I is equal to R into 1 plus I to the power n minus 1, or F is equal to R by I into 1 plus I n to the power 1. Yes. So this is the final value of the installments, regular installments. Okay. If we compare this, the final amount that we obtained with regular interval installment with a single installment, let us say that we make a single time payment at time 0, which is equal to P. We invest amount P at time equal to 0, single payment amount, and this P remains under investment for n periods. Then the final amount F that is accrued is P into 1 plus I to the power n, as we have already derived. Now suppose that we want to compare investment, that we want final amount F to be same with regular installment and single time installment. Then we have to equate the two expressions. For having same final amount with regular installment and single time installment, we have to equate the two. So P is 1 plus I to the power n is equal to R by I 1 plus I to the power n minus 1. Okay. So we get a relation between R and P as R equal to P into I into 1 plus I to the power n divided by 1 plus I to the power n minus 1. And the term in the square bracket is called as capital recovery factor. The term I into 1 plus I to the power n divided by 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 is called as capital recovery factor. We shall see the significance of this term in evaluation of the feasibility or profitability of a chemical project in the subsequent lecture. So we can summarize the lecture today. We have learned the time value of money, the interest, the compounding, discounting, loan repayment. So for single time investment, compounding factor is 1 plus I to the power n. Discounting factor is 1 plus I to the power minus n. For investment with periodic installment, the compounding factor is 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 by I. The discounting factor is I divided by 1 plus I to the power n minus 1. Now derivation of this I leave as homework to you. You have to work with the same series as we did for deriving the compounding factor. And for capital recovery factor, that is the comparison between single time investment and periodic installment, is the compounding factor is I into 1 plus I to the power n divided by 1 plus I to the power n minus 1, and the discounting is the reciprocal of this, 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 I into 1 plus I to the power n, 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 divided by I into 1 plus I to the power n. So this is the simple economic analysis of different investment and earnings with respect to certain interest. Now in the next lecture we shall see the profitability measures of a chemical project, and then we shall also see as how we can make use of the formulae or analysis that we have done in this lecture for estimation of the profitability of the process.